Oh man, I mean, you guys are what you're doing is knocking, but you gotta understand, like a lot of the sort of signal on the other side is ego death. I mean, it may be like if they could mean like to the extent that people like me are taking signals, it could be don't say anymore, or whatever, don't just run off at the mouth to the people like myself. Or it could be like, don't, like, what are you gonna go, like, no, like, share. I mean, I don't know the signals, but like the one other thing I could say is this. See, we know the deep. I'm telling you what the real reason is in those other videos. The deeper reason. But no. As far as these like deliberations, one of the things, like when Obama or anybody, he says, look, we're being held hostage to this like ideological thing. See, I believe that in the sense that like they simply are just saying they don't, like, they're making a point of some kind by, like, I don't know, that may be, but wait a minute. If that actually is what's taking place, that they simply are not, they're not going to budge, for example. Therefore, what is the conversation? Like, they do meet for, like, hours, and it says, like, they're going home for the night, like, having not reached an agreement. Like, it was the indication is what's happening in secret is sort of like they after talking and debating and back and forth, that they simply can't reach an agreement. But wait a minute, like, we don't know what's happening in these negotiations. So if it really is that they're sort of, like, held hostage to this ideological agenda that they simply want it repealed, no matter what, well, okay, picture what they might be talking about in secret. Like, is people from the other party, like, sort of begging them to, like, and they're just saying, like, no. We've said for the last time, we want this repeal. What are they saying then? In an hour-long, like, negotiation, like, the president says, like, surely you can come to an agreement, and, doesn't Senator so-and-so want to add something? And he's like, yes, we've already said it. We want it repealed. Is that what's happening? I'm trying to picture what the negotiation is. If they're doing their work, they are lawyers. Like I said, they'd be talking about the language. That would be, that you'd televise. Be really interesting. Like I said, I have a problem with the language in the beginning. It's early on in the bill, actually. It had what it is. Let me tell you what my problem with it is. Like, let's say I was a congressman. Because forget about that. I know we could talk about, like, gosh, people don't have health care. Let me give you an example. If I was a congressman, okay? Here's my if I'm representing, I am representing my people, actually, if I said this. Because I, come from a certain sector, I know certain people. I would say, look, the point is that the language is the way it is because it's meant that it could be interpreted a number of ways over time to keep it flexible. Okay, wait a minute, though. The language you put in regarding, I understand there are end-of-life decisions and things, but and that's important for people to know, like this and that, but wait a minute. What the language actually says is that it says the doctor shall, the word shall is important. It says the doctor shall be empowered by the state to discuss with patients durable power of attorney and living wills. That's the actual language. Now, you could say, well, wait, it's actually in there, it's referring to this, that they can have end-of-life counseling. Like, that you have the right to, that kind, the doctor can tell you that. But the problem with that language is that actually is a conversation that one has with a lawyer. It's the language, I don't know how it got in there, who put it in there, I'm not accusing anyone, but what is taking place there is you could picture for instance, someone with a family farm. It's an elderly person who's like has Alzheimer's, is not thinking clearly, and is dying. The way the language is, it's actually that the doctor is in a position where they may actually be penalized under the law if they don't bring up with this elderly person. But that's very durable power of attorney and living wills. That's actually giving the language, depending on how you interpret it, would give whatever it's meant to be in there for. It has to be changed, because what would end up happening is you'd have a lot of situations where, due to just corruption in general and things, or for any number of reasons, that the language would allow the sort of deceitful way to transfer inherited wealth to the state. Rather, it's set up that way to the state. And rather than keep it in, it would be a way to get this, to take inherited wealth someone who's not thinking clearly and dying, the doctor would talk to them. There's something very alarming. Durable power of attorney. That's in a conversation with an attorney present. I understand it's not meant that way, but it is though. And if I was to refer to history, James Madison was the main proponent, although they all were, that no matter what else, one of the primary roles of government, remembering that it's always a two-class society. That's not, there's always poor people and rich people in life, okay? That one of the roles of the state is to protect inherited wealth from the majority. I mean, but what does that mean? Okay, what it means is this, that naturally in any society, people who are poor, and then there's like wealthy people, okay? So there's certainly there's a disparity, okay? But in passing on like a family farm or even passing on inheritance, that's part of, let's say, upward mobility, like in a family like mine, each generation is doing better, like to the extent that like I live longer than my parents, right? I mean, the transfer of wealth, that'll be able to give if I was to have a child, a much better life than they had. That's like kind of an important thing. Naturally, there are forces that would want that taken away and given to the state under the idea that it could be used theoretically, this issue of protecting inherited wealth is very serious to people who own family farms, to people in my sector. That language is simply too alarming. I won't pass the bill. I mean, I won't go to, I want it repealed entirely unless we can change that language. But certainly we can change that language, because full well that's almost, whoever put that in is being a little too cute, and we have to change it. That's my objection. But that language can be changed, because of course no one would say no, but Congressman, Steve, no, you don't understand. We're doing we're gonna make sure that inherited wealth is taken by the state. I mean, no, that's not gonna happen. No, they would understand that language does have to be changed. Okay, that would be my issue. But then, so for example, but what about this mandate on small businesses? Well, here's the thing, someone who say, look, in my district, there are actually the majority of people in my district, some other person would say, other senator, the language in the bill creates a mandate on business, but that's correct. I mean, a middle-sized business that's simply making profits by not providing, benefits to their employees, that has to stop. I mean, if they can, they really have to. For people need health care, and it's just simply, there's all kinds of businesses that could do it and don't. Good example, like when I worked in restaurants in New York, there's no health care. When I worked in restaurants in New Orleans, there is. Okay, so that's the kind of thing we want to, there's no reason that they can't. But the problem is, I'm sure the language itself in the bill doesn't indicate or doesn't take into consideration that there may be a person who, is one person owns a very small auto body shop and he employs his nephew, and sometimes he part-time employs a guy from the neighborhood. It was that he can't provide them with health care. It's simply too small a business, and it's not the kind of business. The language has to be, there has to be language added that whatever it says, that there's an exclusion for a business of a certain, I don't know the actual legal language, but it would have to exclude such a business. I mean, they can't, that's not really the same thing as a middle-sized business that's simply making profits by not giving health care. So that language, instead of being removed, like the one I want removed, that language would be like, there'd be added language to take that into account. That would be another senator's, interest. The entire discussion would be about the language, and because there's only one reality, there'd be no right. They would eventually, it would be settled. I mean, it would eventually take a while. It would take just as long as it's taking. It would take just as long as it's taking. But what they'd be discussing is language. That's what a law is, and they'd be doing that. Now, are they doing that? Well, we don't know what they're doing because it's in secret. But based on the statements they're making, it's as though that's not what they're doing. What are they doing? I don't know. But in the other videos, I told you what maybe at work. But I mean, or no, it probably is at work there's something they're not telling you. There can't be health care. But I mean, because of everything we said, because we're subsumed into a neoliberal project. But no. But just in terms of what people are experiencing and perceiving, this is what I would say. But that's a different. See, that's a different way of being of service than I had before because there's another reason. It's much bigger.